Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. We're jumping right into things today because we are looking at the incredible life and the massive legacy of Jyotirao Phule. Now, it's really easy to just stamp him with the label of historical figure and move on. But as we're gonna see, he was literally a visionary. We're talking about a guy who looked at a deeply entrenched, incredibly oppressive 19th century societal system and just decided, nope, I'm gonna tear this down piece by piece. He wasn't just sitting around thinking about it, he was an absolute doer. Education is the path to liberation. That right there is the core philosophy that captured the absolute essence of Phule's mission. I mean, sure, it sounds pretty simple to our modern ears, right? But I really want to emphasize that this single, powerful idea drove one of India's absolute greatest social reformers to literally change the course of history. To him, learning wasn't just about, reading and writing. No way. It was the master key to human freedom. To truly get why his crusade was such a big deal, we have to look at the world he was born into. 19th century India was defined by a genuinely bleak status quo. Society was in a stranglehold of extreme caste discrimination and the brutal practice of untouchability. It was an era where child marriage was just the norm, and strict gender inequality meant that women in marginalized castes were heavily, almost impossibly disadvantaged from the literal second they were born.
So let me ask you something. What would you do if your society told you that you were fundamentally unequal from birth? Like your entire worth was locked in by your caste or your gender, and there was absolutely nothing you could do to change it? It's a pretty heavy thought, isn't it? But we need to keep this emotional tension in the back of our minds. Why? Because it frames Phule's lifelong struggle for exactly what it was: a deeply relatable, fiercely human crusade against a totally unfair world.
So here is the roadmap for our explainer today. First, we'll look at the spark of rebellion. Next, the weapon of education, followed by the truth seekers. Then we'll dive into championing the marginalized, and finally wrap up with an enduring legacy. Let's get into it. Section 1. The Spark of Rebellion. Jyotirao Phule was born in 1827 into the Mali or gardener community. Now, in the rigid Varna system of the time, this community was categorized as Shudras. That basically placed them way down in the lower tiers of the traditional social hierarchy.
Things moved pretty fast for him. Born in Katnagun, Maharashtra in 1827, he was actually married at the standard young age of 13 to Savitribai in 1840. And, despite his family briefly pulling him out of school to work, a sharp-eyed neighbor noticed how incredibly smart he was. So he went back and managed to complete his English schooling at a Scottish mission high school by 1847. But then, in 1848, he goes from a fairly standard upbringing right into a massive, head-on collision with systemic injustice.
So picture this. It's 1848, and a 21-year-old Phule is attending a Brahmin friend's wedding procession. But instead of a celebration, he was rebuked, insulted, and just completely humiliated by the groom's parents, all simply because of his lower caste status. They essentially told him he should have had the sense to stay away. And this is the emotional anchor of our whole explainer today. Because that specific insult, that deep sting of humiliation, it's what forged his iron resolve to fight societal inequality. Section 2. The Weapon of Education. Also in that absolutely pivotal year of 1848, Phule happened to read Thomas Paine's famous book, Rights of Man. So between his own personal humiliation and suddenly being exposed to these big ideas of global liberty and human rights, a realization just hit him like a ton of bricks. He realized that the exploited castes and women were at a severe disadvantage, and that education was the ultimate, absolute must-have weapon to fight that exploitation. Without education, it was lost. Without wisdom, morality was lost. Without morality, development was lost. Without development, wealth was lost. Without wealth, the oppressed were ruined. Wow, his mindset here was just brilliantly logical, wasn't it? It is a stunningly clear progression of thought. He's drawing this direct, undeniable line straight from forced ignorance to total oppression. Basically, if you can keep people uneducated, you keep them ruined. So what exactly did he do about it? Well, he took action. Revolutionary action. Step 1. He started right at home by personally educating his wife, Savitribai. He knew he couldn't fight for equality if it didn't even exist under his own roof, right? Step 2. Together, they opened the very first indigenously run modern girls' school in Pune in 1848. Step 3. They expanded, opening schools specifically for untouchable castes, like the Mahars and Mongs. Now, as you can imagine, this triggered severe conservative backlash. I mean, they were ostracized, and his very own family forced them out onto the street. But thankfully, they found refuge and support with their friends Usman Sheikh and his sister Fatima Sheikh, who even stepped up and helped them start a school right on their premises. Section 3, the Truth Seekers. This is where we really see Phule's fight start to expand. It wasn't just about reading and writing anymore. It became about questioning the very fabric of society. He started questioning blind traditions and heavily criticized the Vedas. To Phule, these foundational texts were basically a form of false consciousness, something designed by ancient conquerors to subjugate the indigenous masses and lock in a permanent framework of social division. To actually organize this broader fight, on September 24, 1873, he founded the Satyashodhak Samaj. That translates to the Society of Truth Seekers. I really want you to feel the thematic weight of that name for a second. This wasn't just some run-of-the-mill political group. He was openly inviting people to cut through the false narratives and systemic lies of his time to find the actual, undeniable truth of human equality. Their core objectives were, honestly, incredibly modern for the time. They wanted to promote equality, completely eliminate caste discrimination, encourage rational thinking over blind superstition, oppose priestly domination, and really empower marginalized communities. And what's super amazing is how inclusively they bridged divides. Membership was literally open to all. They drew in Muslims, Brahmins, and government officials, uniting all of them under the shared banner of human well-being and happiness. Okay, we actually need to pause for a second to appreciate the historical gravity here. Did you know Phule is credited with introducing the Marathi word dalit? It means broken or crushed. He pioneered this exact term to accurately describe the harsh, devastating social reality of untouchability and the lives of those forced outside the traditional Varna system. It's a word that carries immense historical and political weight right up to this very day. Section 4. Championing the marginalized. At this point, Phule was expanding his battlefield yet again. He moved way beyond just education and philosophy, diving straight into radical, highly controversial, hands-on social welfare, particularly focusing on widows and farmers. The status quo back then was brutally strict. It demanded untouchability, child marriage, a total ban on girls' education, and forced widows into complete isolation, literally shaving their heads and denying them any joy in life. But Phule? He countered this with radical action. He directly attacked the stigma of untouchability by opening up his own personal house and water well to lower castes. He established schools, he championed widow remarriage. When you really think about it, you have to appreciate the sheer bravery required to take those kinds of physical actions in 19th century conservative Pune. One of their absolute most radical acts went down in 1863. Pune had witnessed this deeply harrowing incident where a Brahmin widow named Kashibai became pregnant. When her attempts at abortion failed, she gave birth, tragically killed the baby out of sheer desperation, and threw it in a well. Her act was discovered, and she was sentenced to jail. Deeply upset by a society that would force a woman into this impossible corner, the Phules actually went out, stuck up pamphlets around the city, and opened a radical infanticide prevention center right inside their own home. It was a secret, completely safe space for pregnant widows to deliver and either leave the baby in the Phules' care or take it with them, completely free of any societal punishment. Now, throughout all of this, he was also a remarkably prolific writer. His major literary contributions include Shetkaryacha Asud, which really highlighted the economic exploitation of farmers, and Sarvajanik Satyadharma. But get this, his 1873 book, Gulamgiri, which translates to slavery, was explicitly dedicated to the people over in the United States who were actively working to end slavery. That just shows you his incredible global perspective, right? He saw the fight against the caste system in India and the fight against slavery in the U.S. as parallel, connected struggles for universal human rights. Section 5. An enduring legacy. In his later years, Phule wore a lot of hats. He was a merchant, a farmer, a contractor supplying materials for dams and tunnels, and even a municipal council member in Pune from 1876 to 1883. Basically, he was a tireless advocate right up until he suffered a paralyzing stroke in 1888, eventually passing away in 1890 at the age of 63. But before he died, something significant happened. In 1888, the social reformer Vithalrao Krishnaji Bandekar bestowed a profound title upon him, Mahatma. Translating to Great Soul in Sanskrit, this title perfectly, absolutely encapsulated his life's work. And this great soul would go on to profoundly inspire later reformers. Most notably, B.R. Ambedkar, the chief architect of the Indian Constitution. Ambedkar famously acknowledged Mahatma Phule as one of his 3 gurus. That really shows you how Phule's foundational work directly paved the way for modern India's constitutional rights. As he once stated, the progress of a nation depends on the education of its people. That early realization about the sheer power of learning, well, it wasn't just true for 1848. It remains an absolute, undeniable, universal truth today. Education is still, without a doubt, the most powerful tool for social transformation we have in our hands. And that leaves us right here, at the end of today's Explainer, with a question specifically for you. Think about the incredible privilege of knowledge you possess right at this very moment. How will you use your education to seek the truth? Are you just going to accept the status quo, or will you use what you've learned to challenge false narratives and fight for a more equal society? It's a challenge Jyotirao Phule laid down well over a century ago, and it's one we are all still tasked with answering today. Thanks so much for joining me on this Explainer, and hey, keep seeking the truth.